Hello and welcome to This One Thing, a daily video devotional coming to you from First Presbyterian Church of Fort Lauderdale. My name is Nick Merchant. I'm one of the associate pastors here. And each day, one of our pastors or staff members are going to be looking at one of the texts in the Revised Common Lectionary's daily readings. And we'll be pulling out one thing for you to consider. We hope that you find this an encouraging and thought-provoking part of your day. Enjoy. Last year, Netflix released a documentary entitled Greatest Events of World War II in Color. And episode 4 tells the story of the Battle of Midway. Midway is considered to be the turning point in the war in the Pacific. And in this episode, a naval officer is recounting the morning of this critical engagement with the Japanese Navy. And he says this, he says, "Every time they served us steak and eggs for breakfast, we knew it was going to be a rough day. And that morning, they gave us steak and eggs." Something as innocent as a breakfast menu had become an indicator for him for how the day was going to go. I wonder if steak and eggs were ruined for him for the rest of his life, if they continued to be a trigger for worry. What are those indicators for you, those triggers, those seemingly innocuous things which stir up worry, dread, anxiety? Our scripture today comes from the book of 1 Peter in the New Testament, and it's the close of Peter's letter. And I think it's helpful for us to understand that Peter's writing to Gentile Christians, that is, to non-Jews. And I think it's helpful because we can know that these were people who had, previous to becoming Christians, been a part of the dominant culture. Unlike Jewish people, they had a place in society. They'd had normal social lives, and becoming Christian, they became a part of the minority. They became a part of the marginalized. They were being persecuted. They were being punished for being Christians, something that's, I think, perhaps hard for us to really identify with. And in the midst of this letter, in the midst of instructions to these Gentile Christians, he writes to them here in chapter 5 in verse 14. He says, "Cast all your anxiety on the Lord, because he cares for you." A few years ago, I performed a wedding ceremony for a young couple here at the church, and for the most part, it was typical for a wedding of two people their age. Beautiful flowers, happy families. There was a large wedding party. One member of the wedding party was unique, however. It was a dog. And it was a registered emotional support animal, an ESA. You see, the bride suffered from severe anxiety, particularly the idea of being in front of a large group of people, which on her wedding day was definitely going to be the case. It was a large wedding. And I can remember this moment in the ceremony. The sanctuary was full. The wedding party had processed in, and those in attendance had stood up for her entrance, and the father had given her away, and we prepared to walk up the steps to the chancel so that they could exchange their wedding vows, the bride and the groom, that is. And from my very close vantage point, I could see the panic beginning to build in her. She began to lose the color in her face, and her eyes began to flit about nervously, and she looked at her soon-to-be husband with rising tension in her eyes. And then the most beautiful thing happened. He looked back at her calmly and squeezed her hand, gently rubbing the back of her hand with his thumb. And he whispered these 4 words. He said, "Just breathe. I'm here." We made it through a beautiful, beautiful ceremony on the strength of those 4 words. Just breathe. I'm here. You may be feeling like today is going to be one of those steak and eggs kind of days, but our text today, it says that we are to take our worries, our concerns, and we're to cast them on God, that we're literally to place them on the Lord, to allow God to carry them. And it's because of this one thing. It's because God cares for you. God cares for you. In the midst of your stuff, in the midst of your stuff, in the midst of whatever that stuff is, God says, just breathe. I'm here. Friends, be safe. Be well. We'll see you tomorrow.